Hey, it's Becky from Patchwork Posse and Patchworkers Plus, my online quilt group. Today, I am going to show you how you can add a flange to your binding. Now, this flange is added to a quilt that is going to be bound from the backing fabric folded over to the front. So it's a little bit different than if you were going to be using the regular binding method. I thought I would show you the steps I take to add some interest to the binding, and this is for just a small, simple baby quilt. It's super cute, really quite simple, easily can be added, and I give some hints on what you can use to make it stay while you are sewing. So you can do a little bit of prep work before you hit the sewing machine and everything will stay nicely for you. So for this technique, I'm actually going to be adding this flange fabric to a quilt that I am rolling the back side of the quilt to the front for my binding. And so this is a rollover binding with a flange. It is possible. It's a little more work, it's a little more tricky, but it is possible. The first thing I have done is I have cut a piece of fabric, multiple strips that are 1 inch wide. Then I have folded this in half, just meeting the raw edges, and pressed it really well. What we're going to do next is put our flange in place. So we're going to line up the flange. The raw edge is going to be inside the binding. So you have the folded part facing the center of the quilt. I'm not going to start at the very end because when we get to the end, we want to, fold this over and make it a nice finish. So I'm going to start somewhere down here. The next thing we're going to do is start our binding. So we are going to fold this over once and fold this a second time right on top of the flange. Got lots of little bits of thread here. Right on top of the flange. Now, if you want, we can go ahead and use some glue for this technique. The glue that I'm going to use is simply the Elmer's School Glue pen. So this has got a little bit of a tip at the end. It works really well. You can also use a glue stick, and that works as well. So whatever you have, maybe you've got a Roxanne's glue, that would work. What I'm going to do is just place some glue right along this edge here where my flange is going to go. Just going to do some dots. I don't need a full stream, I just need some dots. And I am going to start placing my flange piece right on top and then just pressing it down. We're going to repeat this all the way around the quilt. If you want, you can work in sections, or you can go all the way around the quilt and then return for your binding. So what I'm actually going to do is just work in sections. And so right on top of my flange, I am going to just put some additional glue down, and I'm going to fold my binding once. So the raw edge of the binding, that's actually the backing fabric, is lined up with the raw edge of the quilt, and then fold it a second time right on top of the front, which is now also on top of the flange that we just added. And I can go ahead and add some clips here. If you want, you can kind of fiddle around with this depending on how much of the flange you want to show. So sometimes your flange is like 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch. It really just depends on what you prefer. But you can use the glue method to secure everything down and go back with the clips. But we are just going to add our glue again. Lay our flange right on top, and then add more glue if you need. and place the binding right on. So we're just going to secure this, and now we're going to take our binding and fold it over. I didn't add any glue this time, but it's staying pretty well. I already folded this edge, so I might need to, on the next side, use the glue to keep it secure. All right, when we come to the corner, you are just going to make sure that your fold faces the quilt center. And so I just kind of folded it over. I'm not going to see any of this area, so it really doesn't matter that there's a fold in there. So I'm going to finish this like this. So I folded once, folded twice for my binding edge. See if we can get in closer here. Now what we're going to do is we are going to take this corner, we are going to fold it at an angle or at a miter right along this edge. So the fold line comes right along the edge of the quilt. We are going to repeat folding your binding towards the quilt edge, lining it up once, and then we're going to fold the binding again right on top and make sure that it is revealing that flange. So you might have to play with this corner to get it to lay down flat. Might have to add some glue if you need. We don't want our flange to shift, so use the glue and then use your clips to secure everything in place and continue all the way around your quilt. For sewing this on, you are going to just get this started under your needle. You're going to leave your clips in until you need to take them out. And I just kind of, I take the one that is closest to the needle, and I take it out, and then I kind of pull or tug on this bottom part just a little bit to make sure I don't get any crinkles in when I am stitching this together. Go slow if you can, control it. When you get to the next clip, take it out. Because we've glued this down, it does stay in place pretty nicely, and you just kind of slowly go along. It is a little thicker of fabric, so be mindful of that. Then if you need to make any adjustments, go right ahead. Just pinch things down, use your stiletto, your fingers, what When you get to the corner, you're just going to take this really slow. So I'm going to pull down and feed in that binding. So when I'm at the corner, I'm going to remove my clip and I'm going to use either my scissors or stiletto or something sharp to make sure it is tucked under. Then I'm going to slowly go to the corner and then make sure my needle hits the top edge of that binding piece. I can leave my needle in the down position, lift my presser foot, turn it. I know it's secure. I'm going to drop my presser foot and I am going to slowly come off that corner. The corner has a lot of bulk and it might give you some issues, so just go slow. Then I am just going to continue like I did before. And I already tucked under the end of my flange, and there is another video, I'll link it in the description, of how to tuck that tail. So it's pretty slick, it doesn't show, you don't have to just sew any extra seam or anything, but it gives you a nice finished end. All right, there you go. So here is a look at my flange with my nice mitered corner. And again, this binding is the back side of the quilt. So I just rolled the back over to the front